The Fantasy Six-Pack Hour. With your hosts, Joe Bond.
You're awful.
And AJ Applegarth.
It's Sin Shu Chu. It's a mouthful.
All right. Welcome to the Fantasy Six-Pack Hour. My name is Joe Bond, founder of FantasySixPack.net. With me, as usual, AJ Applegarth. What's up, man? Special Monday night edition. You ready?
Oh, yeah. Sure.
And on our special Monday night edition, because it is a dynasty baseball specific topic, we're bringing in the man for Fantasy Six-Pack with that topic, Mr. Dave Eddy. How's it going, man?
It's going. Slumming it with you guys, but other than that, not too bad.
Hey, could be a lot worse, right? Maybe.
Could be worse, yeah. AJ could have been 40 minutes late.
Don't tempt me.
I was going to say,
Wait,
man,
I'll be right back.
That's fine. We already going. You out. So tonight we're going to be doing our 2022 MLB Draft Recap show. We've, of course, got our guest of honor to do this one in Chris Blessing. We'll bring him on in just a second. But before we do that, just want to remind everybody, hit that subscribe button, like button, leave those reviews, hit those, I don't know, what do you call it on Spotify and stuff, like the 5 stars or whatever it is. I don't even know what it is. Just help us out. Leave those for us, and we appreciate it. And then, of course, if you are playing fantasy football this season, Fantasy Six-Pack has new membership tiers, guys. Right now, we've got draft cheat sheets, and AJ actually left. Oh, cool. Draft cheat sheets. I was like, I don't know. Draft cheat sheets, projections. We got our rankings back behind there. During the season, we're going to be putting our DFS tools along with a bunch of other content. And the biggest thing there is you're going to have access to us too. I don't know if you want access to him, but you want access to me.
It depends on how much they like money, Joe. If they like money, they'll want to have access.
I know. I'm busting your balls now.
I know.
So you'll have direct access to us on Discord. I kind of help lead the redraft side of things. I can comment on some dynasty things. Dave is Mr. DFS. If you are following him on Twitter, and you should be, he wins lots and lots of money. So you want to win some money and get some insight from Mr. Dave Eddy, go ahead and pay for one of those plans and get in on that on our Discord. He'll get direct advice from him. So with that being said, let's bring in our guest. There he is. Chris, where'd you go?
Oh, sorry, I was late. Sorry about that.
This guy.
Oh man,
Comedian.
it's like he knows us.
It's like I'm looking in a mirror.
How's it going, Chris?
How you guys doing? I'm doing great.
Good, man. Good.
How's your draft going? I know you're in a fantasy football draft right now.
It's going well. We're at my max bet right now could be $3. We're in an auction draft, and I got Murray, quarterback Harris, running back Waddle, Judy, Andrews, Jacobs. I don't know why I just got a bunch of Alabama dudes. Mooney
that's not a terrible thing.
as a backup wide receiver, and I've got McPherson as my kicker. So
solid work.
Pretty decent draft considering I've been on the pennies for the last hour, maybe. I don't know, but it's long. So thank you for having me. This is awesome.
No, glad to have you on, man. I always love doing these shows with you. So again, tonight we are doing our MLB first year player draft recap from these about a month or so ago, was it? So yeah, we're now that everybody's kind of settled in, we figured it out, and everybody's signed who's gonna sign, right? We can finally start attacking these guys for your dynasty baseball drafts. And so, but before we get into that, can't continue without doing beer of the week.
Beer.
All right, Chris, you are the guest. What you got for us?
Well, I've already started. I was my fantasy league is at a brewery here in Dalton, Georgia, called Dalton Brewing. I had a mango IPA, so I came home and found whatever had the least amount of alcohol. that I had. So today it's New Realm Brewing Company's United Craft Lager. It's a 4.5 alcohol volume. I bought this as just kind of a single thing to try it. So I've never tasted it before. So perfect beer for this.
All right. So you gotta let us know. Dave, you're joining us on this one. What you got, man?
I tell you, I don't have the basic bitch Bud Light like I usually do, and like you guys have seen me drink. This is on recommendation because, I mean, we kind of got talking about how I like lemonade and stuff, and somebody suggested the Line and Kugel Summer Shandy, and I wasn't a big fan. And then somebody had mentioned this. It's a local thing. It's from Old Nation. It's just called Shandy, but it's basically the same thing, only it doesn't suck.
Basically the same.
I'm not
thing.
gonna lie, man.
But it's
I
actually
actually
good.
feel like somebody had one of those on the show just recently.
It
Because I
would
was
be
like,
really
it's literally
fun.
just called Shandy?
They would have to live very close to me. I would assume. I don't think this is hard to find even here. So I imagine it's hard to find like in the real world. You know,
What's the brewery?
Old Nation?
yeah,
and it's
Old
just called
Nation.
Shandy. I just kind of remember this like black can with a yellow label and just
yeah,
said
it's got
Shandy
the
on
most.
it. I
It's
don't.
literally got the most basic little sticker on the can too. Like there's not. I mean,
I've
it's
seen that before too.
Yeah, I don't know why. I've seen it. But
I might
anyway.
have seen that at First Pitch Arizona. Someone could have brought it from where do you live?
it's from like the Lansing, Michigan area.
Okay.
It's
Yeah,
in it's in a small town of Williamston, Michigan.
Okay.
Figure it out. AJ, what you got?
I am drinking one of the ones we didn't kill off at the expo, and that's the Devil's Backbone Brewing Co. Juicy Magic Juicy IPA with the roller skating stag.
Is that the box we forgot to open?
No, that's over here. That's the thank.
We were leaving. We were
Cyborg
leaving on Monday. We were
Ranger.
like, damn, we didn't open one.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, we still have a lot of beer. Why are we leaving?
Oh, because, yeah, I couldn't do it anymore. All right, so I'm drinking a Equilibrium called Fluctuation Double IPA. I gave this one a 4 1/4 on Untapped. It's pretty smooth. I definitely enjoyed this one. Got this one. This was another one of my beach trip brews that I picked up from that place. It was very, very good. So, all right, Chris, you ready for this? Let's jump into our.
I'm as ready as I will be tonight.
That means you're ready.
I'm
right.
just happy Dave's here because, like, if I do fall down, he can.
You might be the first person I've ever heard say that.
Well, usually it's Joe and AJ, and they're just like, yeah, uh-huh.
I mean,
Not worth.
Yeah, to be fair, it is an upgrade from them. I'll give you that.
really, we're really worthless on this
Yes.
show. I'm not gonna lie. That's why we have you, Chris, and now Dave.
Thank you.
So,
Merely just the MCs.
So let's jump into things here. We just got some general questions here about this draft and draft class. And last year, we mentioned how it wasn't exactly the deepest draft, or at least it kind of was perceived that way. And this year, like, it felt like it was very, very deep. But kind of like last year, it didn't seem to have a clear number one pick. Like, even going in, I remember, of course, the Orioles had the first pick, and it was like, well, who are they going to take? And I know there was, like, because of the salary and, like, the money implications, so that's not totally obvious. But, like, there are certain years, right, where, like, the number one pick is just like, yeah, I mean, like, they'd be just total idiots if they didn't take this guy. This year didn't seem to be that way. But does that mean that the top players weren't as good as those players, or there was just more than one of those, like, top-notch players in this draft?
So, like, last year, what was missing was we had no college hitters. I mean, that was pretty much the subject of that draft. The 2020 draft was heavy with pitching, college pitching specifically. Last year, we started seeing kind of a run on some prep hitters, specifically shortstops. The best player from that draft, it looks like right now, is Jordan Lawler, who the D-backs took. And this year, I thought there was a clear number one guy. The Orioles didn't necessarily feel like the guy that I felt was number one. but they did pick number 2, if that makes sense. And I think that by picking the guy that they did pick, who we'll talk about shortly, I think that he matched what they look for in players more so than the guy that I had number 1, Drew Jones, who went 2nd overall, who's currently injured. That's Andrew Jones's. I almost said son, and I don't know why I blanked there. His son, so like again, there was some objectiveness. I don't think anybody really thought that. At least anybody I talked to thought that there was a question that Jones wasn't the top ranked guy. However, others are like that. I think 1 and 2 were pretty much throughout every contact that I talked to was Drew Jones and Jackson Holliday. And then there was a separation, but that separation was as good as what we saw in, at the top of last year's draft, if that makes sense. So the 2 top players better than last year's, but then, you get into maybe 2 through 15, which were about on par with what went, maybe 1 through 8 last year. So,
okay.
Except for the 7th pick last year, which was a high schooler with a lot of upside pitcher for the Frank Mazzucato from the Royals. So, like it was different. And that's kind of what we see every draft. It's different, and you're trying to also maximize your dollars. If you're like the Orioles, who I thought had a phenomenal draft, even beyond the first, having that first pick, you're able to maximize your spending by being, a little shifty with how you draft guys.
Yeah, they seem to be really good at that. I don't know, Dave, you got any thoughts on kind of the depth of this draft and just, what we can kind of expect from it, a couple of years down the road when we start, really drafting and pulling these guys up in our Dynasty Baseball leagues?
Yeah, I mean, I think Chris nailed it pretty good. I'm always like a bloodlines guy anyways. So Jackson Holliday, Drew Jones to me were the clear-cut, top guys. But I think just on a whole, as far as a fantasy perspective, this is a much better draft class than we had in the previous year. And there were a lot of people, myself included, that, even in the draft last year, knowing that we're happy to give up, draft capital from last year's draft and move it into this year's draft. Huge difference, in my opinion, fantasy-wise, between a first-round pick this year and a first-round pick last year. So I think that just kind of speaks to the depth of it.
And that's a lot. And just to get onto that point, that's a lot, having more college hitters here. I know that at the top of the draft, we're talking about 2 high school guys. And, pick 4 and pick 5 are also high school hitters too. But having these college guys, it really was dark on the college end, where you were, that catcher, Henry Davis, was the best. Coming out of that draft was the best guy. I also don't think we're going to see some of the surprises that we've seen in the last 2 drafts, where later on in the draft, there's that guy that might have gotten missed because of the COVID pandemic. So like this, I feel like is it goes pretty deep. You're getting pretty good value 3rd, 4th round. And we saw some teams, Brock Porter was a guy that got taken later. Money guy. Some people had him as their top prep arm. I didn't, but some people did, and he was number 2 on my list. And he was outside the first few rounds.
Yeah, that's good. AJ, you want to move on?
Yeah, sure. All right. So looking at this, how much do stats play a part in your evaluations of a player, Chris?
Well, I come from an amateur background now. I am a associate scout for a team, which isn't really a big deal. It's essentially free labor for them. I get a bit of education every year, and I've gotten to learn a lot about the draft. And the guys that I've worked with have been awesome. Some of them former writers just like myself. So I've gotten a pretty good education there. And when I'm looking at amateur guys, I want to see the level of competition that they're facing, specifically with the preps. Like you try to get to go see a guy when they're against the best in their region, district, whatever it is. There was a kid a few years ago, Jordan Walker, who's a top prospect now. And I saw him against essentially maybe a Division I guy was on that team, but not really a big team. And those pitchers were like throwing 75, and you can't really judge a guy off of that, especially amateur guy like that. In college, it's a little different, and teams are more concerned now with not necessarily performance, but they're concerned about the analytics part of the game. Getting that blast motion data in batting practice is huge. I know, like for you guys, the Orioles, that's a big deal for them. And you see prospects that they get, Gunnar Henderson, Colton Cowser, these guys that they've drafted fairly high in the draft. The reason for that is, they're looking for certain parameters, and most teams have their own little system that they use. And, that goes into this more than statistics do. But when I go and make a fantasy first year player draft thing, which I haven't actually done yet, and we're going to try to piece one together later on. Hopefully Dave and I can do that. But like, that's the thing is, then I'll start looking at stats. And at that point, I want to know how they're doing against the best competition. So if I can find, let's say, Kevin Perrotta, the guy that the Mets took, if I could get a bat, maybe a Cade Horton or something like that, and see how he handles a guy of a similar level as he is, or at least a future high minors type guy. I'm more concerned about his performance against those guys than the crappy ones, if that makes sense. And it was one reason that I wasn't so high on oh my God, two-way player, Rays prospect, Brendan McKay. Sorry. I wasn't as high on him as others as a hitter. I mean, too bad his arms kind of got shredded, his shoulder got shredded and stuff. But he did all of his damage his draft year. He didn't play against the Friday starter, the number one guy. And he did not perform well against the Saturday starter, which is every team's second best pitcher. So he did most of his damage against that Sunday pitcher, who's the number 3 guy on the team. And then also the 4 and 5, the weekday starters. So that's a big red flag for me. If somebody's not performing against the best players that they're going to face. And so I only had him really as a pitcher when he was drafted. So those type of things go into my consideration more than your average regular stats.
Yeah. Dave, you got anything to add there with any of that?
I mean, I think a lot of times I'm going to say this on this episode, but I mean, I agree with Chris. And, one thing that I often say, because I'm not usually looking at, these draftees, I'm usually looking at like prospects. And I'll always tell Nick and Jason, on the On Deck Circle, I don't put a ton of stock in stats below AA, just because, like Chris's point, the level of competition just typically isn't there. Now, obviously, they'll face quality pitchers or quality hitters from time to time, but on a whole, low A and high A are pretty bad baseball a lot of times, and so I obviously would prefer to see good stats as opposed to bad stats. Like, I want to see a guy hitting 370 instead of hitting 170, but because he's hitting 370 does not necessarily mean that he has got, more along the lines of what we're looking for than that guy who is hitting 170. So you really have to take stats with a grain of salt, I think. And I think Chris did a really good job of breaking down, how he's looking for, a different route of looking at splits where, he's saying, hey, I really want to see what they did on Friday and Saturday, not so worried about what they did during the week. And I think that that's a great point.
And another point, Dave, I'm going to promote my podcast this week. One of our writers, Jeremy Deloney, this is the Eyes Have It podcast. It will be released on Apple tomorrow at some point once I get it edited. But we talked exactly what Dave just spoke about how the differences in levels. So like, I know we're getting away from the draft, but like, this is how I kind of look at it. I look at low A and complex to be kind of like the Wild West. Dominican League is even more of the Wild West. So, we'll call that the Wild West. We've gotten to Arizona at this point, Phoenix area, for the other parts. High A, pitchers start coming with command. That's really the big thing.
Yeah.
Double A, that's when the breakers start spinning. Triple A is the home for misfit toys. That's these guys who've already been in the major leagues. I hate sending prospects to Triple A. I want them to go from Double A, kind of like what the Braves have done, Double A to the major leagues. And if they fail in the major leagues, then send them into Triple A, because Triple A is about adapting. It's not about development. Development for me stops after Double A. So and so I, again, just like what Dave said, I throw away so many stats lower than Double A because it's the quality is so much different.
No, fantastic information. I mean, it's just stuff that I don't even think about as a pretty non-prospect type guy. I mean, I'll be honest with you, like, I'm in a dynasty league, but I'm recruiting help to rebuild my team. I dominated for a few years just with like a ton of talent, and now that they're all older and like dying, Chris Sale, I need help rebuilding. So
Joe, I did write a 10-part series on how to do that.
I know I'm using a little bit of that. Also
There you
using
go,
one of
there
our
you
own,
go.
using one of our own writers or kind of writer to help me do all of it. Yes. But all right, let's jump into some of these specific players here, and we're gonna start with some hit, power, speed guys, kind of the all-around type of guys, right? That we noticed got drafted, and we'll start here on near the top with Drew Jones, got drafted by the Diamondbacks with the 2nd overall pick, a high school outfielder from Wesleyan.
Yes,
in
Wesleyan
Georgia.
High School. Yep.
All right, got it right.
So Wesleyan High School's a Christian school that's outside the Atlanta metro. It is very low division sort of team, absolutely loaded team. And, we were talking about guys that went and played competition. Wesleyan did a good job of scheduling competition early on in their season. So when the teams got bad, the scouts didn't have to go anymore. And so this was a kid that came in, showcase season. So, excuse me, the burps are starting already.
You good.
But the season, so showcase season's in the summertime, okay? Summer and fall. And, Jones wasn't the top player during the showcase season. He shortened up his swing between the end of that and the beginning of this season. He was using his lower half a lot better, which was kind of propelling his power potential. Again, we mentioned that he's the son of Andrew Jones. Should be a Hall of Famer, in my opinion. And I'm not even a Braves fan. But I believe I was scared of him. Growing up as a Mets fan, I was scared of him. And if I was scared of him, he should be in the Hall of Fame. But a guy that like right now is a hit over power type dude. But I do believe like his hit and power are both plus tools, especially like kind of seeing him on video this year for Wesleyan and his ability to get to loft, which wasn't really the case during the showcase season. Now, I don't believe he has the sort of power as his dad. Remember that at 19, we saw his dad, if you were around. Andrew Jones made his major league debut at 19. And he was a lot different body type. He had Jones's athleticism, his son's athleticism. But Jones might actually have a little more athleticism. I think he's a quicker runner. He runs great routes as well. I know that's not really a big deal in fantasy, but when we're talking about a guy sticking, and if you're in a position oriented thing. I believe this guy sticks in center field, and I also believe the stolen bases will remain in this profile for a while.
Okay.
We're a little scared. Came up with a shoulder injury when he got drafted. There's always pause for me when it comes to shoulders. I don't worry about his hit or his speed. I worry about his ability to lift. I don't know if you remember Troy Gloss had a really bad shoulder injury. Richie Sexton had a really bad shoulder injury. And depending on the severity of what his injury is, which I'm told it's not that terribly severe, and that they do believe that surgery will heal him. But again, there's some warning there now. He was, as a prep guy, my clear number one fantasy guy because I really feel like he was going to move fast. A guy who's been around the game for a long time, of course, is going to, get to different levels probably quicker than other guys. So, just like Dave said, those bloodline guys, unless you're Ryan Ripken, you tend to be really good. Which I give Ryan Ripken heck, and I don't think that he was the worst bloodlines guy. I think it was. I don't want to say. Bobby Bonilla's son was a soft tossing lefty, so that was a little weird. And they were all on the Orioles. There was four, Dale Jarrett's kid was on the team. We were even getting NASCAR guys on a Delmarva team.
Billy Ripken still has the best baseball card in the world.
Billy Ripken does. I agree. So yeah, that's my analysis on Drew Jones.
All right, Dave. So. Real quick hitter here on this one. I just have a question for you. The little bit that I've read on him, just so I didn't sound like a total douchebag about these guys. Some are worried that, and Chris said that he's not worried about the speed, but there is some speculation that he's going to add muscle and so the speed will eventually go. Are you worried about that at all, or do you think the speed sticks around?
So, to be fair, they say that about everybody, right? Everyone, they say,
that is true.
Oh, when he matures, he's going to lose a step. And some people do, some people don't. I don't think you can just chalk it up and take it for granted. What I do think is interesting, and I'm curious what Chris thinks on this, I find it interesting that he gets drafted by Arizona because I think a very good comp for Drew Jones is already in that Diamondback system, Corbin Carroll.
It's a solid comp. Carroll, at this point in his juncture of development, was a guy that hit the ball on the ground. He still hits the ball on the ground more so than a lot of other prospects. And I think at this point he was much rawer. And that's not really a word, but we'll just say it for this one here. But I think that the skill set, yes. The player. As the fantasy prospect writer, I would comp that. So you're right there. But as the amateur or whatever I am, associate scout, I would probably find a different comp for Drew Jones. But yeah, you're right. I think it's amazing that I still see Carroll not in people's top 5 fantasy prospects, and I'm almost like, what the heck, man.
Wow, he's gonna get called up probably at the end of the season with very limited minor league experience, and I think people are going to be surprised because, like I will say about most pitchers, if they can stay healthy, this guy is going to be something special. So, we'll see what we get out of him.
All right, moving on.
All right, so coming in next, the next bloodline guy we got here is Mr. Jackson Holliday with the O's. Obviously, Father Matt, tons of all-star appearances, long career in the MLB, big power hitter. Used to run in his early days, I feel like, but then I guess he put on weight and that killed that. So, what are your thoughts on Holliday here?
So for our book, The Minor League Baseball Analyst, I get to every year give 10 names or 15 names, maybe 20, I forget. Of high school guys that are going to pop. And actually, Jackson Holliday was the last guy that I included, thankfully, because it made me look semi-smart. He didn't have the best showcase season. And what I mean by that is Some of the better pitching kind of got to him. He wasn't getting to power, but he was making a lot of hard contact. And this is a calling card with the Orioles, as we said earlier. They love these guys that get to average max velocity at a high rate. So this is a guy that did kind of the same thing as Drew Jones did, shortened up his swing, started using his lower half a lot better. This kid learned from his struggles in the showcase season, because I think people like coming out of showcase season, it was Shamar Johnson and Elijah Green. Maybe not so much Elijah Green, because the swing and miss was a little scary and stuff. They were kind of at the top, and then there was this group that was headed up by Drew Jones, and probably at the end of that group was Holiday. This is a kid that does pretty much everything well. He doesn't do anything great. It's very much similar, and granted, different players again, but very much similar to what Arizona took last year in Jordan Lawler. A guy that is, kind of fills it up, plus potential tools at every tool set, from speed to power to defense to, he's a true 5-tool talent. And the thing is, I believe that what he saw, what the Orioles saw this year, and probably necessitated them drafting, was he was starting to get angles, especially to the opposite field on his fly balls, getting loft, getting that carry that teams look for. And that really kind of set him apart, according to my contacts this year. This was a kid that went from a mid-first round to end of first round type player coming into the spring, to a kid that just kind of jumped up and was next in the conversation after Drew Jones.
All right, Dave, you got any thoughts on Mr. Holiday?
I was a little bit surprised to see him go number 1. Not like it's a massive shock or anything, but like Chris has said earlier, I thought that was Drew Jones' spot. What I like and dislike about Holiday is one and the same, where he doesn't really stand out to me personally in any one area, but he is, probably going to be above average everywhere. So I think that may make for a not super exciting, like, real life player, just a super solid guy, but also a guy that, for fantasy purposes, you can draft and not have to worry about, oh, this guy's going to get me home runs but no steals, or this guy's going to get me a ton of home runs but he's going to hit 200, or so he's just going to be a nice, well-rounded player.
Nothing wrong with that.
It's just not flashy,
Yeah. You need some of those guys for your fantasy teams. Just, what you're going to get out of them, and they're just not sexy names or anything. So you eventually draft them.
All right, well, let's jump over here to some of the best power and hit tool guys. So leading off this conversation, we're going to start at the 1-4 with Kumar Johnson. The Pittsburgh Pirates took him with the 4th overall pick. Second baseman for Mays High School, also in Georgia.
Yes. That's been here's a funny story. I saw none of these guys this year. I at least saw Johnson last year, so I had a thing. At least I knew what I was getting into. I ended up getting like the worst flu I've ever had for about 2 weeks. And it took me out of 2 opportunities to see Drew Jones, 3 opportunities to see Johnson. And then by then, the team wasn't willing to assign me to those guys because when you're not drafting in the first 10 rounds or 10 picks, these guys weren't going to get there. So I lost out, unfortunately, on him. Short-statured guy, left-handed power hitter, very advanced hit tool. It's a raw double plus type ability. He's like 5'10", 5'9", shorter limbs. And on hitters, shorter limbs, as we've seen, with clean swings, with good plate coverage, they don't miss the ball often at all. So this is a guy that hits the ball hard. Also, can get loft, has power to the gaps, specifically right center field. I think one of the things that has worried people is that size. Even though we've seen several shorter stature guys hit home runs at high rates, I think we're still a little bit, I guess the word would be discriminatory against shorter guys doing that sort of thing. But what makes this guy special is that the hit tool can carry him, specifically at second base. This guy was drafted as a shortstop. He does not have shortstop range. That was one of the things that was evident when I saw him last year. And we were talking about how Drew Jones got to play competition this year. And that was a hard thing for scouts to see, was you couldn't see Johnson against really top competition, maybe during the state playoffs, but at that time, teams are concentrating more on college guys and all that kind of stuff. And by then, stories have already been told. I think this is a phenomenal pick for the Pirates. I've not been the biggest fan of some of their draft picks in recent years. I liked their draft pick last year with Jones, or with Davis, I should say, because it was something that they didn't have. But if you look at guys like Nick Gonzalez, they've had a lot of really bad luck, especially when they're picking pitchers. So I was very happy to see them take Johnson with this pick.
Dave, any other thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I think they kind of were surprised that Johnson is even there, because I don't think we expected Kumar Rocker to go third. So when Johnson is there, I don't know. I mean, obviously they had him in consideration, but I'm not so sure that they thought he would be there. And I think it'll be interesting because, like Chris said, this is a small dude, 5'10", like 175-ish or so. But it is very intriguing that, he's got 25 plus home run potential, but with extremely high, contact skills. And I think that is one of the best combinations of a young hitter that you can get is, you're getting the power without losing the contact. I'll sacrifice speed in today's game for that extra contact.
Yeah, I like the fact that he's going to be more geared towards second base, because you don't have a lot of good options there from a fantasy standpoint right now. So obviously everything's cyclical, I feel like, and the positions kind of turn over, but it's good to see someone younger at a weak position that's got high contact, is going to get on base, and is going to get you some home runs. So I like that aspect about it. So the next guy we got here is the 11th pick, and that's Kevin Perrotta. Went to the New York Mutts out of Georgia Tech. He is a catcher. Any major insight on the Mutts pick?
The Mutts. That's terrible.
3 of 4 for the Phillies. So
he's a Phillies fan.
Sorry, that's a tough life, man.
Not a good weekend.
But you guys got some really, they finally hired coaches that can develop pitching. So have a lot to look forward to, whether it works out this year or not. At least you got some young arms on the way. And we'll talk about their first rounder a little later. Perrotta is a guy. So we were talking about the depth of the draft last year. Okay. This is the 11th pick, and the first pick in the last year's draft was very on the same level as this guy, if that makes sense, if that shows you where this draft is this year. Okay. So Henry Davis is in, I think, AA or AAA now for the Pirates. This is a kid I think that will move pretty quickly, mostly because of his bat. Of course, the Mets have Francisco Alvarez. That's probably going to be their catcher. But I can see somewhere where this guy ends up being a guy that catches halftime and DHs the other halftime, while Alvarez catches halftime and DHs the other time. This is a kid, when I saw him, just absolutely rockets the ball to all fields. It's something that you don't normally see. The angles the angles are both good from the pull side and to the opposite field. And usually with college hitters, even the better college power hitters, you see a difference there. And that's very similar to Davis last year. Davis is a better catcher than him, and maybe that's where there might be a little up on there. But I really like Perrotta. He's a very patient guy. You've got that home run power, and I also think that his hit tool is very underrated. It's a power driven hit tool. You know, a lot of times, you know, guys, when we call a power hit driven hit tool, it's a product of their power tool that's really accentuating the hit tool to the degree that it goes to. Yeah, I like this guy a lot. There could be some swing and miss issues, but who doesn't have them?
Especially
we're not talking about
right?
somebody who's going to be exceptionally striking out, but which might be his counterpart for Alvarez. It might be one of those guys that hits a lot of home runs, hits a lot of extra base hits, but strikes out a bunch too. So like this guy's a dude that will probably move a little faster, and somebody that I think it was a good pick for your for my Mutts, I guess, since I was the Mets fan growing up, even though I can't root for them right now because of the contract that I'm under. So
good, stay with that contract.
That's hilarious.
I think that this is a guy that I probably will never come away with in a first-year player draft, and part of it is kind of his fault, and part of it kind of isn't his fault. And I think part of it does come down to they've got Francisco Alvarez, who is going to be their catcher. I think that dude is just absolutely elite, and he is going to be catching as often as possible. I also don't think that even if he didn't get drafted in the Mets system, he probably wouldn't have stuck at catcher anyways. I mean, he's got great offensive upside. I just don't know where he's going to play. And if I knew that he was going to stick at catcher, I think that would actually probably bump him up a little bit value-wise for me. But because I truly don't think he's going to play catcher, and I don't know if he's going to – I mean, God, the worst thing he could do fantasy-wise is turn into a DH, right? Like, I mean, you hope that he at least catches enough to get the eligibility.
Oh, right.
And then he's fine. But if he ends up not being able to catch, or they decide, hey, you know what, our backup to Alvarez, we really want a defensive guy. Because usually a second catcher is a guy that is all defense, and that's not going to be Perrotta. So those are the reasons why in a first-year player draft, I probably would never come away with him. I would much rather just reach for upside from other guys and see what I get from him.
I could see that. I think that makes a lot of sense, Dave. Good point. All right, let's move over here to our power speed tool guys.
That's everyone's favorite category, Joe. Everyone loves the power speed guys.
Well, except for the hit power speed guys. Maybe get all three. No, let's just focus on the power speed guys, right? So starting things off here, the 5th pick in the draft, Elijah Green got drafted by the Nats from the IMG Academy down there in Florida.
So another Bloodlines guy, but a football Bloodlines guy, Eric Green. Remember him, tight end for the Pittsburgh Steelers?
I do.
This is his son. So I don't know where I put this. It might have been in our podcast, Eyes Have It podcast, or an Eyes Have It article on Baseball HQ. But I threw out a very weird top when I saw him. I saw him junior year for IMG for 3 games. And I threw out a Will Anderson from Alabama coming out of high school. Same sort of body structure and stuff, same sort of bulk. The difference is Anderson got to college, got to a weightlifting thing for football. So this kid was actually kind of being developed like a football player, which makes sense. That's what his dad knew. Between last year and this year, he really leaned up his body and became more of a baseball player sort of body. Still very athletic, still very long, and still muscular too. So like that was good. There was a little concern for me that even though he was still showing off the speed, that he'd get pretty stiff after a while if he started putting on more bulk. So this is a kid that is very physical player, very powerful player. Saul probably he hit 2 home runs that are probably the 2 hardest prep home runs I've ever seen, and I saw Jordan Walker, hit some absolute shots. This kid damages the baseball when he makes contact. One of the things that kind of came out of the showcase circuit was Some teams really, really loved his the true scouty teams, which the Nationals are a true scouty team. I believe their general manager still makes their draft picks, which is not something that you normally see here. He's apparently very involved with the draft, and most GMs will just check in on guys and do that kind of stuff. Be in the draft room, make a comment here and there, go and talk to the media real quick. So they're a very scouty team, just like the Padres are. They might have overlooked some of the hit tool concerns here. It is, even though he has shortened up his swing, he's a longer limbed guy. So there's some swing and miss on it. Recently, the big trade for Soto acquired actually the guy I was out looking at the day that I saw Elijah Green, which was James Wood. That was like the 3-4 on IMG last year. Like, it was an incredible 3-4, and I'm going to tell you, Wood looked horrible in that look that I had against really good competition. See, even that sometimes doesn't really, tell you what you need to know, because he's been nothing but great. So I believe that Green, even though he's in the same class as all of these prep guys that we're talking about, his bat's a little further behind. And I don't know if the Nationals are the best organization for this guy. Yes, they developed Soto, but I think any of the 30 teams would have developed Soto. I think Soto was naturally a talented guy. I worry because they haven't necessarily, like, for instance, what's their second base shortstop's name? Luis Garcia. Garcia like almost looks like the same player. He's bulkier, but he almost plays like the same player I saw in low A. Like, aggressive at bats, all of this kind of stuff. The swing sometimes uneven. When you see that sort of development where it doesn't seem like a development staff, and probably never going to work for the Nationals, but who cares? I don't plan on getting in the game anymore. But to me, it's a bad fit. I know that they've changed hitting coaches and instructors throughout their minor leagues, but still just a little scared about this pick. I actually put that in my first-year player draft evaluations, where if I'm not sure that somebody can develop a guy, like, for instance, I discounted the Phillies, the prep pitchers that they took. But when you get the right instructors in there and you get the kids buy in, now you're looking at Micabel and Andrew Painter, on a different level now, and looking at them as different level type pitchers. And with the Nationals, I need to see results before I kind of, take Elijah Green and say, okay, the power and speed will work, but is this kid going to be Joe Adele, or is he going to be somebody who doesn't even make it? And there's that possibility there.
I'll tell you, there's one team that I can think of that would not have properly developed Soto. Detroit Tigers.
I was just going to say, he's going to rip his own team.
The Tigers have developed, one hitter, that homegrown hitter in basically my lifetime, Nick Castellanos.
Yeah, I believe they won't mess up. They haven't messed up Riley Green. So, those natural hit guys. And by the way, another plug for this week's podcast. I had two guests because my co-host Brent Hershey, the co-GM of Baseball HQ, he was down with the sickness. He had a cold. So I had two guests on, two Baseball HQ guys. I had Jeremy first, and then I had Rob Gordon, who is a Tigers fan. And we just ripped on Tigers development, Dave.
That makes sense. You can do a whole podcast on that.
I think next year, because we're already filled up next year, Dave, Rob, and I are just going to rip on Tigers guys on the Eyes Have It podcast one week.
I'll live stream right from in front of Comerica Park. I don't even give a shit, Chris.
He's going to have a sign behind him.
Yeah. What are they?
Tigers development, player development sucks.
Yeah,
it's the Ty Madden pick last year. Like any other team, like this is a guy coming from Texas, and Texas is very old school in developing pitching, and he has a very low quality fastball. And here he goes to Detroit. Is he going like?
That's the thing. Like that again. Like you saw who he gets drafted by. I knew why he didn't get drafted in the first round because all the pitching, the woke pitching teams were like, no, we're not touching this until the second or third round. And here's the Tigers stick. Was it the comp round or something like this? And they went guns blazing. He's in AAA, but like I looked at his metrics, and his fastball is just it's not going to perform in the major leagues, and I have no confidence in the Tigers. We're getting off on a tangent, Dave.
Well, I will just want to piggyback because I did just see Ty Madden live a couple weeks ago in High A, and he was getting rocked. So for a guy that was
you saw the same game Rob saw.
Oh, maybe he was getting ripped up. Like everything that was hit was hard. I mean, he was getting some strikeouts because he was overmatching some of these high A hitters. But they were hitting the ball hard off him, and I just went, shit! Like this is definitely not going to work out. I don't know. What are we talking about now, Joe?
We were talking about. I think we were on Perrotta. No, we were on Elijah Green.
Elijah Green.
Yeah. So, no, we can just move on to the next one if you want.
Sounds good.
All right, AJ, move on to the next one.
So we got
that ship has sailed.
Dylan Beavers with the O's. He's out of Cal Berkeley. Any big thoughts on him? I mean, we've already talked about the O's a bit. So
again, college player, Orioles prospect. This is a guy that again hits the ball hard consistently. Not as much hit, but again, he's coming from Cal Berkeley. Not necessarily the best at developing prospects right now. I mean. Every other year, we're talking about Cal Berkeley getting rid of their baseball program, and if the Pac-12 falls apart, I guarantee you, it's going to fall apart. First off, but also I guarantee you that Cal Berkeley is going to get rid of all sports. They're just going to be like, we don't do sports anymore. So, like, I really feel like this is a good opportunity for the Orioles to develop a guy that has the attributes that they're looking for. Hard contact, consistent hard contact too. It's whether they can make that adjustment. And they've done it with some of their players. I mean, the Orioles have been, last 2 years been one of the best developing teams in baseball. So like, I feel like this is a good fit. And that's why I picked him for this. Yes, he has the plus power and the plus speed tool. But I do believe like this is a good matchup of player and organization.
I mean, when I look at Beavers, first of all, I love his last name. Second of all, I think that he's just a classic like power speed like prospect where he just like we were saying, he has concerning contact rates. He struggles against breaking balls, but it's intriguing because. He can hit a lot of home runs and he can steal bases. It's just he's going to struggle in between those events, So it's almost just like the prototypical, baseball player at the moment.
I mean,
I'm a fan of Beavers as well.
You're gonna like one of the next picks we talk about too soon. Dave, because you're 12.
Do you want to hear a fun fact real quick? And you don't know this because you're not from Michigan, but if you're from around here, everybody knows about this. Would you like to hear it?
Yes.
I mean, yeah.
All right, AJ, I wish you're gonna like this especially. So you need to be seated for this. So around the Detroit area, okay, there is an exit for Big Beaver Road, and it happens to be exit 69.
I mean.
So, moving on. I just you had to know.
Gronk will build a yacht house there and retire on Big Beaver Lane, Route 69, exit 69.
All right, let's finish the hitters off here with our hit speed tool, guys, and we're gonna start off here with pick 17 overall in the draft, Justin Crawford from the Phillies. Played high school ball, Bishop Gorman High School in Nevada.
Yeah, one of those factories for athletes, just like IMG Academy. You always got guys coming from Bishop Gorman in every sport. This guy's another Bloodlines guy, son of Carl Crawford, former
Just
All-Star.
gonna ask, is that where that's from?
Yes, that's where it's from. And he is kind of behind Drew Jones and Elijah Green as like the best athlete in the first round. He's done really well this year to really kind of fill out a lanky frame, kind of built just like his dad. The same sort of type of athleticism. I think Carl had more athleticism probably at this age. Of course, I didn't see Carl at this age, but Carl was definitely a faster runner than his son is. His son's still double plus runner. I think the big thing this year, he went from a guy that was kind of a spank hitter, I mean, that might not be the right appropriate thing to say spank after we're talking about beavers.
Yeah.
But going, he was a slap
hitter.
He was very slappy, in previous years. This year he still is a opposite field hitter, but he's hitting the ball with more authority. Again, I don't know if the power really comes, as much as maybe some others believe, just because right now he can't really get great angles to the pull side. So, that's kind of concerning. But then again, you've got a potential plus hitter. I kind of have him at above average to be truthful. And then somebody who has double plus speed, always an attribute for us fantasy players.
Yeah, I mean, I think his dad is a reasonably good template for him. Like Chris said, elite speed, right? He's got a good feel for hitting. We would like to see more power, but not everyone is able to do everything. I mean, if he's going to try to sell out for power, then he's just going to be sacrificing on his hit tool. So you just kind of got to let him be who he is. Get bases, get base hits, try to get on base, steal some bags, probably, play solid defense. And I just think it's I don't know if it's ironic, but it's fitting that his dad is Carl Crawford.
All right.
Yeah.
AJ, last hitter.
All right, last hitter we got here for our hit speed tool is Mr. Chandler Simpson with the Rays, and another Georgia Tech guy, this time outfielder. What are your thoughts on him?
Probably the fastest guy in the first few rounds of the draft. Absolute speed burner, a guy that makes consistent contact, high contact rate guy. And it's, essentially, some bloops, some liners. This is a guy this year that really became a proficient bunter, throughout the year. A guy that does work all fields, as somebody that's probably never going to really hit for power, but a guy that's going to do enough. And I think that's why, again, he's wasn't first round talent. He was a supplemental second round pick. But it's a right organization. The Rays were able to get power out of a guy like Yandy Diaz, who the Guardians couldn't do. And so they've had a track record of maybe getting lift out of a guy that has a very flat, linear, plane swing like Simpson. So, this is a guy to kind of file away more so than anything, but it fits the Rays. If you watch the Rays minor league teams like I do, they're always loaded with like 5 middle infielders that are playing 4 positions. They'll throw one of them center field, second, short, and third base, and that's how they roll. So this is a perfect player to organization type guy.
So I'll say 2 things about Chandler Simpson. Number 1, I automatically give a bump to anyone that is in certain organizations. The Rays are one of them. However, Chris said something that is absolute fantasy, just kryptonite, and he said that he's a proficient bunter. When that is something that gets mentioned, I'm just going to be out. I'm just out.
Yep. Yeah, these speed only guys don't
either, dude.
Well, it's hard to strike out when you're trying to bunt.
I guess
these literal speed only guys are so hard to keep their value up.
Yeah,
we just see him flop time and time again. So I'm kind of with you, Dave. But I mean, they can be fine base baseball players. They're just not good for fantasy. But
to
let's move over here.
Speed down.
Yeah, let's move over here to the pitchers. And we've got one in 3 different categories. So we're going to start off here with a high school pitcher, Dylan Lesko, number 15 overall, got drafted by the Padres from Buford High School in, wait for it, Georgia.
Yes.
There's a theme
And
here,
so
Chris.
another guy that I did not get to see this year, but this was not because I was sick. It was because he got hurt. I was going to be able to see him. And then all of a sudden out with undisclosed injury. And I remember talking to the contact and was like, TJS. And he was like, I'm not going to say those initials. And I was like, okay, TJS. Excuse me. So was the top preseason arm. He was a guy that was like absolutely fire last year. I think he would have been a top 10 pick last year. He would have been a top 10 pick this year if not for this injury. Great job by the Padres taking a risk. I've talked about them being an extra scouty team. This is not like a lot of the pitchers that they've drafted. They took Cole Wilcox with a high draft pick, high signing bonus a few years ago out of college here, and like he. Metrically wasn't necessarily the greatest guy in the world. A solid pitcher, don't get me wrong. This guy's just his metrics are through the roof, especially his fastball. He sits in the mid 90s, has thrown it up in the 97, 98, 99 range. It's a flatter plane fastball with some really good riding movement and some tailing action at the end. It complements the fastball with maybe the best high school changeup that I've ever seen on video from a guy that throws this hard. So that's 2 pitches that could potentially be double plus pitches. And throw in the fact that the breaker is high spin rate type deal. It's a 12-6 breaker. I'm not as high on that pitch as some other people, but I really think that it's an above average pitch. Again, this guy's hurt. So might not be the top prep arm in fantasy drafts, but, could be pretty up there. So a shame that he got hurt, but good player.
So anyone that knows me knows that I am very borderline into the old like tin snap kind of thing. There is no such thing as a pitching prospect. I avoid pitching prospects almost to every degree. I much prefer to let a guy, especially a really young guy, work his way up and through the system and get to the big leagues before I really am too interested. So, from a fantasy perspective, I'm not saying that I wouldn't want my Tigers necessarily to have drafted him, but for like a first-year player draft, especially early on, first, second, maybe even third round, I pretty much can just wipe a pitcher off the board. That's just the way that I roll.
I mean, you look at, and this is a good thing. You look at the high school drafted guys that are right now tops on the fantasy lists. Grayson Rodriguez has been hurt this year. Daniel Espino has been hurt this year. I think you're a safer bet most of the time out of college, unless you like pick a Casey Mize with like the first pick who was never healthy. He was never healthy in college. Right. I mean, we pointed out like his healthiest season, he still missed 2 starts. So like, I mean, there's that factor there, but like, I tend to agree. I don't necessarily throw high school arms that high up in my, I don't target them at all, to be honest with you. In my drafts, I target guys that are going to be on the field when I need them. I mean, high school guys aren't. I'll be honest. The last college guy that I even took in a draft was maybe Logan Allen for the Guardians, and I mean that was a first year player draft. The reason why I picked him is it's just such an unusual thing with him. He's a low release point. Low 3/4 shorter guy, and it's pretty crazy fastball and crazy swing and misses he gets, and there's not much effort there, so I feel pretty comfortable that he's not going to blow out his elbow. But you never know. I mean, that's the problem with pitching. And while I don't totally subscribe to that theory, I do practice that theory.
I'm very borderline, Chris. It's there.
No, Dave, you're not borderline. You are absolutely all in on that.
There's really a GIF of me on Twitter that says "I hate pitching." So, yeah.
Right. So, look, just my one thing to say about this though is like, so just for anybody like listening, and I mean me included, really, is because he's already had Tommy John, does that make you like, oh well, he's already had it, so like maybe there's less risk of him getting re-injured, at least that injury?
I mean, for my dynasty rankings, I even have a blurb in there that says I would if I'm going to trade for a guy, I would actually prefer to trade for him as close to him getting Tommy John surgery as possible. But a lot of that has to do with a value kind of a thing. You know, like I feel like I'm probably getting him at a low point. But, I mean, yes, I could argue both sides of that. But I'd probably lean more towards I would kind of prefer a guy that's actually already had the surgery.
I hear that a lot. That's why I wanted to bring it up. So I don't know really how much truth to that there is. I don't look into, how many guys have already had the surgery that never get it again or really come back well from it, that type of stuff. But he's a high school kid, so maybe he's got some time. He'll figure it out. Who knows?
I'm not going to reveal the guy, but I'm always skeptical of TJS, even today, as common as it is. There was a major league pitcher, and again, I'm not going to name his name because I think he's still toiling around in the minor leagues. But I got intel while he was in the minor leagues that he had one reported TJS. He had another one, and also had a secret elbow cleanup that most teams didn't know about. And so he had TJS twice.
Interesting.
And then I know it's not as a pro player. He had TJS as well.
Interesting.
So this guy
I know it's not
had 3
unheard of.
TJSs in 7 years. I look at it as get somebody out 7 years. 7-8 years is the life of TJS on average. That's not botched. So that's kind of how I look at it. And yes, I'm kind of with Dave. If somebody's already had it, and specifically if they're already playing and they're showing that their command has returned. Yeah. I know like some guys, we were talking on our podcast about Nick Frasso, who just got traded from the Blue Jays to the Dodgers. He's a guy that's now throwing like 101, 102, but his command hasn't come back. Even though he's absolutely dominating high A right now, it's still, there's still some concern there whether he's probably a reliever, but whether that's going to come back, and he's going to need to throw, command. He's going to have to command his pitches to be successful, even if he throw 101 miles per hour, as Hunter Green has done. He can't command his fastball.
Right.
Yeah.
We've all seen that. All right, AJ.
Mm-hmm. All right. So the next guy we got here is the 7th pick off the board, and that's Mr. Cade Horton with the Cubs out of Oklahoma.
So, Joe, I sent this to Joe. I sent my list, and he said, don't you have other college pitchers too? And I was like, man, the college pitching this year sucks. And the reason for that is everybody got hurt. If you wanted to be a top prospect as a pitching prospect for the college on the college side, you were going to get hurt this year, unless you were Cade Horton, who kind of came on at the end and made a lot of money for himself with the
5 hole
World
starts.
Series. What?
5 hole starts.
Yeah, 5 hole starts, like literally made a lot of money for himself. Love this kid. Specifically, loved his moxie in those in the World Series and in the regionals this year. 94, 96, carry up in the zone, arm side run, fairly good command as well of pretty good stuff. Upside is as high as any of the college arms in this draft. But still, you've got that, still moving away from surgery. I think it was in February last year, 2021, that he had surgery. So like we're still
pretty close from that. I'm sure it was probably not the full procedure. It was probably the new, the new type of TJS that it's not as invasive, and that guys can get back quicker. But still, there's that concern. There's that little red light there. But then again, he's already had it, so he has some time. I really like Landon Sims coming into this draft class, but then he got burned up. He was the Mississippi State reliever last year, who was looking phenomenal in spring practice as a starter. And there were several other arms too. It just was a really bad year to be a good college arm.
I mean, and I feel the same way about Horton as I probably do about every one of the pitchers we're going to talk about. Like I said, not a guy that I would target. He's actually probably a good example of a guy that went much higher in the real draft than we would consider taking him in a first-year player draft. But probably a guy that just would never be available in a spot that I would consider taking him.
Fair enough. All right, so we're gonna finish off here with I don't know if we've really ever talked about somebody who was previously drafted on this and then got drafted again, but we're gonna do it. And the third overall pick, Kumar Rocker. So we have listed as independent league. This year was drafted by the Texas Rangers. I mean, we all know. I think anybody who really follows baseball kind of knows who this guy was just from last year. I mean, the dude was like just electric. Vanderbilt, right?
Yeah, Vandy.
Yeah, I mean, the gifs online just like were crazy. They were funny. Like the guy was just dominating in college for a long time.
He's a Georgia kid, Metro kid, and if you notice, the Pitch Ninja loves his his Georgia bred guys. Xavier Curry made his debut last week with the Guardians, and instantly, like, his first strikeout was a gif. Like Kumar is was one of the popular people on Pitch Ninja's feed.
He's got a personality.
Who? Pitch
Kumar.
Ninja?
Rocker.
Oh, yeah, Kumo does. Yeah. Kumo.
Yeah. Like,
I said
yeah.
Kumo. Like, that's a Japanese restaurant in town. I guess I'm to that point where I'm starting to call prospects after Japanese restaurants. But anyway, here's the thing, and we covered him last year, so folks, go back and listen to that. I'm going to say this, and I said this last year. This guy has never, to me, been able to keep up his stuff throughout a whole season. I go back to scouting him in high school. I had this great Cole Wilcox versus Kumar Rocker. 50, 60 scouts were there, and I got that coverage, and which was pretty crazy. 20 minutes later, or 20 minutes down the road, I saw Taj Bradley, who's now a top prospect in the Rays organization, pitch, and only four scouts were there. Had stayed over. I don't understand that. But anyway, this is a guy that at times has lost velocity through his career. It sounds like he had shoulder cleanup surgery in the fall after not signing with the Mets, who did not like his medicals. There's some red markers here that are a little scary. The Rangers have improved their pitching development over recent years. They were a team, from what I understand, got into analytics, like hired an analytic guy for the minor leagues, and then like let him go or demoted him because like the coaching staff hadn't bought in yet, and then switched the coaching staff out, got a different analytics guy, and now it's a new day. But like the two big things are his high velocity fastball with good riding action, especially when it's sitting up in the zone, and the wipeout slider. That's really kind of a 1-2 punch. The curveball or the changeup and the cutter are two, maybe average pitch. I actually like from his arm angle a cutter. I think that's really kind of where he should focus to get left-handed hitters off of his fastball. But again, a big-bodied kid who should, be honest with you, I expected him to be a hoss when he went to college, and he has shown that at times. His freshman year had a dynamic time.
Sophomore year had some dynamic moments. His junior year, there were some up and down moments, and then of course when he didn't sign because of injury, I started thinking, okay, he consistently would lose velocity throughout the season, and that's a red flag for me.
So, I mean, my main takeaway from Rocker here is, the reason that he went so much higher than people expected is because he signed for a lot less than slot value. So slot value there was like $7.5 million. He signed for like $5.25. So that's got part to do with it. So, people who, the worst kind of research you can do for a first-year player draft is to draft off of the actual draft board, because there's a lot of things that play into that. And so, Cade Horton is an example of that to a lesser extent than Kumar Rocker. So, I mean, that's kind of my main takeaway there is don't look at him going third overall and say, well, geez, he's obviously the best pitcher on the board. I'm gonna be taking him early. He's not a guy that I'm looking to take in the first round even. So just something, this is a little piece of information.
No, I think Chris, you said that before. Look at the money, and you've pointed out some guys even in the second round that got like really big money compared to where they should have gotten or what they should have gotten in. So keep an eye out for those guys.
And I also will say you also should look at development situations too.
Absolutely.
And everybody, a great resource. And I talk to Jeff Ponce a lot from Baseball America. He's one of my best friends in this game. And the rankings of organizations at Baseball America, you can come through a historic thing in the last 5 years and you can figure out which teams know how to develop guys and which ones are just getting lucky for 1 year or so. So I recommend, if you're a subscriber there, go check that out, because it will give you good insight. We try to do something on our website every year talking about the state of farm systems and if they're maintaining or not. But like organizations like the Orioles, specifically the Guardians, the Rays, the Dodgers, the Cardinals, the Mariners now, the Astros. These are teams that the Brewers do more with less, it seems. These teams tend to always churn out guys, even when it's been questionable. So look at the signing bonuses and look at the fits hey, if this kid looks like somebody that you've seen in the major leagues that got developed by this organization, there's a pretty good chance they know what they're doing with that sort of profile.
And when all those fails, you can check my dynasty rankings.
There you go.
And in the Orioles case, they'll develop them and then ship them off to somebody else, and then they explode.
Maybe not. We're turning things around. We got the best record in the American League since like middle of May. Come on now.
Yeah.
Yo, these guys know what they're doing. This is they did it with the Astros.
I was gonna say we'll figure it out. They're all gonna come up at the same time. They're gonna be good.
Yep.
Already pulling them up. So all right, let's close things out here with our lists.
All right. So last thing I want to say is Kumar Rocker, obviously bloodline of John Rocker. His illegitimate son.
Tracy Rocker, former NFL lineman, current coach maybe at UT, lineman coach. He grew up in Georgia. He went to high school in near Athens because his dad was coaching UGA at the time.
Got it. I was
just kidding. Not John Rocker. I wanted to throw that out there, and I also
I like it.
You were late, so I kind of wanted to make sure that get another dig in before we left.
Stay late. Okay, got it. All right. Well, now I'm late.
Chris is, by the way, is like our fantasy 6-pack, like Tim Kirchin, man. He's just got random stories and like he knows all the connections. You're like, I just stopped talking and just listen. It's hilarious. I'm just like, I'm good.
You say that, but like last year, I was in the back fields, and there was a lot of well-known people. I got to see Jack Leiter for first. I probably was one of the first people to see him in Rangers gear, working out. And anyway, I go and we're watching Royals and Rangers, and Keith Law's there, and I was like, "How the heck do you pronounce this guy's name?" And it was one of their high draft picks last year, and he goes, "It's Ben Caderna, like Moderna." And I think every time I've met Keith, I've had one of those. You're saying I'm the Tim Kirchin. Keith Law is truly with the prospects, and Jim Callis. Both of them have a lot more stories than I do. They rule this sort of thing. So I might be the fantasy baseball storyteller, but those guys are better.
It's fine with us.
All right. So now that I'm super late for the list, top 12 overall for a fantasy baseball rookie draft. Chris, who you got?
I'm gonna throw it to Dave.
Oh man,
I don't have a top 12 yet.
Okay.
But for me,
We're gonna work together.
Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dave.
You want like 1 through
you.
12, or do you just want to go like okay?
Yeah,
Give me
12
your number
overall.
one,
For fantasy draft.
Yeah.
Can you count it down?
for
12 to
first
1?
year draft.
I don't know.
Now, number 1 for me is Drew Jones. I mean, I don't know that that's necessarily dead obvious, but I think it's the pick. After that, I know that Chris is going to disagree with me on this one, but just from for me, when I do the first year player draft, I'm looking at upside. And so my number 2 guy is Elijah Green, just because I think that just tools wise, he has got the best overall tools. He's obviously he's risky, but if everything pans out, I think he's like a top 5 player in baseball. So
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's good philosophy there.
So that's why I would go Elijah Green, but I feel like Chris probably would have him if he were to make his list prior to us talking. He probably would have him more in like the 5 range. But then I like Jackson Holiday, kind of just because, like I said earlier, just well-rounded, not going to kill you anywhere, but also not going to, be elite necessarily anywhere. Just a nice overall profile. Probably Tamar Johnson goes 4, right? I said earlier, I love the power that he possesses with the contact skills. I think that pair isn't super common, and so I like that. And he's got a very clear playing path in Pittsburgh as well. So as a high schooler, he's obviously not going to move fast, but I think he could be a quicker type mover. Guy we didn't talk about, 2 guys we didn't talk about. Number 5, I'm going to go Gavin Cross.
Go Hokies.
Okay, there we go.
I was waiting for that one.
That's the only guy Joe knows that we've talked about tonight.
Hell yeah.
Just a good blend. Some hit, some power, some speed. Just a very intriguing overall player. Next, a guy that I kind of was hoping the Tigers were going to take. He was on the board for their pick. Cam Collier. Just again, another just intriguing guy. He's got a lot of power there. Just a guy that I'm really interested in there. Maybe my favorite guy, I'd come in with 7. Another guy we haven't talked about. I say favorite, and I don't mean favorite as in like I would take him first overall, obviously. But I absolutely love Chase the Lawler. And this goes to what Chris had just talked about as well. Chase could have probably fallen into a better organization. He's in Cleveland with the Guardians, and if I'm gonna take a hitter and put him somewhere, Cleveland's gonna be one of those spots. I think that this is a guy that I might even take top 5. If I had the 5th overall pick and Chase the Lawler's there, I'm probably just gonna jump the gun there and take him. Let's see. I like Jace Young. Maybe I'm a little bit of a homer guy there with Detroit. But I think he makes the top 10 there. Just a guy that's got a really good bat. Hits the ball really hard. Good on base skills, which depending on what kind of league you're in, that could be helpful. But that's usually one of the last things that a young guy is going to develop, and I think he's got a huge head start there. And it's something that the Tigers desperately need anyways. Again, he's not blocked by anybody. That could be a guy that moves pretty quickly as well. Maybe a Jacob Berry even, if we want to go round out the top 10. A whole lot of upside there. But again, we need for everything to click, because he's kind of a guy that doesn't really have, a defensive position. So he's kind of one of your bat only kind of guys. so he's gonna have to hit. But from a fantasy perspective, they all have to hit, right? So
yeah, they do.
But he needs to probably play at least enough defense that normally we don't think about defense from a fantasy perspective. But again, we don't want this guy to be a DH only kind of guy, because that's going to really, hurt his value to us. So defense here does kind of play a role. That's 10. I don't know how deep you want to go, but
yeah, I think
let's go 2 more.
Good. 10's good. Or 2 more.
Let's go 2 more. Okay. Most leagues are 12. Let's be real.
All right, so again, not a
so.
guy that I would pick, but if I'm looking at how I'm going to rank these guys, I would put Dylan Lesko probably next on the list. It's just that's a guy that's in a good organization. I mean, his upside is just ridiculous. So I really do like him as probably the top pitcher coming out of here, but I probably wouldn't take him. No, I wouldn't probably take him. I wouldn't take him at that spot. But rankings-wise, I think it's a fair spot probably to put him. And then another kind of safe guy here, I guess I'd round out the 12 with Brooks Lee, going to Minnesota. Kind of boring.
Very boring.
Maybe another guy that may be better in real life than in fantasy, but I would argue that he maybe had the best hit tool for the entire class. Doesn't have a whole lot of power, doesn't have a whole lot of speed, but I think that he's just a solid player,
I think that you picked the guys that needed to be picked. Only thing I disagreed with was probably number 2. I would have, just like you said, had him 4 or 5.
Yeah,
I would have been a little. I would have probably went Johnson too, just because of. I'm more risk adverse. As much as I can't stand having high schoolers in my top 5, as many as we had, I think that they were all deserving guys. I don't know what to make of Brooks Lee as a fantasy player, and I think that made a lot of sense putting him at 12. I think I would have probably had him around 12, 13. I love that you went with Lawler that early.
That's my dude.
It's a guy that, and for the listeners, he's had a really rough time staying healthy. But when he's healthy, he's a 3-tool fantasy type dude: speed, power, and hit. And going to an organization that has developed similar tool sets with the contact and the power, and we haven't necessarily seen it all come together for the Guardians, but they've gotten elements of this. I like him. I like him a lot. And hopefully he can stay healthy. I thought that was a phenomenal pick. I actually had the Guardians potentially taking Lesko too. So, when Lesko went off the board, it was chase the Lawler or bust for me. So I thought that was a great pick.
All right, so Chris, Dave gave his top 12, and it seemed like you're at least mostly in agreement of the players that he chose. So who are some guys? I imagine most first-year player drafts are 2, if not 3 or more rounds. But the league I'm in only does 2. But let's just who are some other guys that should be near the top of the next round, or that you really like that we didn't mention already.
The profile again, and you got to understand, I'm a very, very big contact, hand-eye coordinated type dude. I like guys that can make tons of contact, and let's work on the other stuff. But Drew Gilbert, who went to the Astros, I feel like he's a guy. He went 28th overall. I feel like he's a guy that could be picked here. I think that he got overdrafted in this, the specific next guy. But there's a lot to like about Spencer Jones out of Vanderbilt. A guy that might not have performed the way that he should have, but I think that from my contacts, he seems to be a student and seems to be somebody who really works hard. We have already talked about Dylan Beavers that the Orioles picked. Another guy. And I also wanted to say that too. And I really, I'm gonna say this: throw another Tennessee guy out there, a pitcher. I really thought that Blade Tidwell was a phenomenal pick by the Mets. I think they got him in the late second round. I think he was like the third or fourth best college arm on my board. But he's somebody that could creep in maybe at 23, 24. He might actually be a third round guy if you go 3 rounds with this. But yeah, those are solid guys just off the top of my head real quick.
Cool.
All right, Dave, anybody you're looking at?
I didn't expect you to come back to me. So to be fair,
Okay, moving on.
well, the next guy on my list would have been Drew Gilbert, just to say that.
Good.
And so
Yeah.
that was the very first guy Chris mentioned. So at that point, I was like, all right, well, no reason for me to keep listening. Obviously, we're just going to stay on the same page here.
All right.
Yeah, we're
I mean,
good.
that's fine.
Good.
We
We
can.
covered a lot.
Yeah, no. Let's just close it out here, AJ.
Yeah. All right. So, who are a couple of players that you guys are avoiding in your rookie drafts that people are just going to go out and take because they were actually drafted early? Chris?
Well, for me, we kind of talked about. We've already talked about the guy that I would actually kind of avoid, and it's more because I saw a lot of him, and it was somebody that you had in your top 12, Cam Collier. I've personally just never seen him good. I got him sophomore year for 2 games. I tended to watch video when I watched video of his year this year of him struggling. I think he's a fine player. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think he's advanced as some people think he is. He's 17, and he was in a junior college that wasn't much better than some of the high school leagues that he could have been in the state of Georgia. He went to a really small school. I can't think of what it's called.
Chipola College.
Yeah, but he went in high school. He went to a
high
very
school.
small. It might have been Mount Perrin or something like that. But like they weren't playing much competition. He gets a move up because of bloodlines. But I'm probably also not picking Brooks Lee either because I just don't think he's going to be a fantasy asset.
So I'll give you one name, and this one name just has 3 massive things going against him for first-year player drafts. First of all, he was drafted high. He's a top 10 pick. He's a pitcher, and he got drafted by the Rockies. So Gabrielle Hughes is just a guy that is just not going to be on my draft board for a variety of reasons. Somebody's going to take him because they're going to end up picking in the, second or third round, and they're going to go, oh, God, this guy was drafted in the top 10. Yeah, he can't. How bad can he? He can't be that bad, right? Like, yeah, sure, he's in Colorado, but like, I feel like it's a good value. Well, spoiler alert, it's not. That's just going to be a guy I'm just going to shy away from. I'm sure he's a great kid. I'm sure his mother and father are saints. I'm just not touching him for fantasy purposes.
That's totally fair.
Yeah.
All right.
To me, it was an overdraft, and like they didn't save that much money off of him.
No, $1 million
for the overdraft. I had him in the second round, probably midway through. I think I like Tidwell better than I like Hughes. I think that there is some potential there, but like again, that Rockies thing, whether you think or not. I mean, I was a big Chris McMahon fan. Who got drafted a few years ago. When he got drafted by the Rockies, he went off all of my list. Another right-handed pitcher, and I think he's had a rough time. He was University of Miami. So like there's that sort of thing happens a lot. And thank you, Rockies, for ruining a pitching prospect again.
Yet continuing to draft them in the top 10.
They were very kind. Like when I was trying to find a job as a scout several years ago, they always wrote me. Their scouting directors wrote some of the nicest emails, telling me that they weren't interested. Like they wished me well and all this.
It's not you, it's me. Is that what they were saying?
Yeah.
No, they were like, oh, we don't have any openings or anything like this.
Yeah.
At least they didn't like lead me on like some organizations did. So
Yeah, well, that's true.
give them that.
I mean, to be fair, though, I don't know that Colorado is doing anything wrong because they kind of have to draft pitchers earlier because no one's going to be signing with them. Well, no massive free agent is going to sign with them.
Unless you like the schools in Colorado, like Mike Hampton did like 20 years ago.
Yeah, well, I mean, that didn't work out very well.
Where'd that get them now?
So if they're going to get pitching,
$200 million.
This is how they're going to get it.
Yeah. They know they can bring in the hitters.
Yeah. So that's
all right, well,
get it.
That's it for the show. Chris, Dave, I want to thank you guys for coming on. Chris, before we let you bounce, let everybody know what you got going on and where they can find your stuff.
Well, our biggest thing right now is Baseball HQ is the registration for First Pitch Arizona, which is going to be November 3rd through 6th at Sheridan Mesa Wrigleyville, which is right across the street from Sloan Park. A lot of good things happen there. A lot of big fantasy names are going to be there as well. It's a forum. It's a symposium. It's you get to as I heard on the Sleeper and Bust podcast the other day, it's where all of these values get set early in the year because all these brains get together and talk it out on our stage, and it's really good. So promote that. Eyes Have It podcast. Brent Hershey and I do that one. And then behind the paywall, I have a weekly column. I'm also now the director of something like prospect analysis. I forget exactly. I should actually find out what my title is there.
That's kind of like the title we gave Dave. We just put director in front of something.
No,
really sure.
I'm the fantasy six-pack bitch. That's well known.
I mean, at least
I don't think that.
I texted two of my friends who are assistant scouting directors, and I was like, "Got the director before you, bitch."
That's funny.
Yeah, it's all a joke. It's a little more headaches, but it's been fun. HQ has let me be me, so I love them, and just happy to help wherever I can.
Sounds good, man. Well, thank you again for coming on. We always have fun talking to you, and it's very educational, if not also fun at the same time. So have a good night, man, and we'll do it again soon.
Thank you, man. Thank you, guys.
See you, Chris.
Right. Dave, what do you got in store for us now that baseball's sort of ending? So what do you got in store for us here this off season coming up?
I'm super excited. I'm diving deeper into DFS. I'm actually going to hit a very niche topic. I'm going to be doing DFS cheerleading, and so my very first. Okay, maybe not so much, but wait a minute, hold on. So
at exit 69 on Old Beaver Road.
Are you guys telling me you don't want to hear about like the new inversion rules that they're putting at like the World Championships?
I do, sure.
Oh, well, I don't know anything about them, so I can't. I didn't expect you to call my bluff, AJ. But
I didn't
let's
expect
see.
me to not be on time. Wait.
Yeah, about that.
Starting, I think the date's looking like the 31st of August. I'm going to start putting out NFL DFS videos. And so we're going to start off with just kind of some position-by-position strategy kind of things. And then working our way towards, week one. And basically what I'm looking at doing is Wednesday through Saturday, going to be doing a position-by-position breakdown for that particular week. So, it's going to look something like, running backs maybe on Wednesday, wide receivers on Thursday, that kind of stuff. And then on Sundays, I'm going to be joining I'm going to say their name wrong. Was it the Wolfpack? I'm going to be joining them. They kick off at 11:30, so I'm going to be on there doing a couple segments for 10 or 15 minutes on Sunday morning. So that'll be my Sunday content. But baseball, as far as my content is concerned, is wrapping up soon. It's been a ridiculously profitable season. The goal is to absolutely carry that over to NFL. So if you give a shit at all about winning money, I would suggest at least checking it out.
Subscribe to the YouTube, and you'll get even more personal advice directly from him on the Discord. So again, hit up those memberships. The all access plan is where it's at. So
we can talk about all sorts of things DFS.
And of course, we'll be getting some Dynasty baseball all season content as well, rolling hopefully. So check out that on Fantasy Six Pack, which is this man's job to figure out, not mine. So, all right, Dave. Well, thank you for coming on and making this more of a discussion than me and AJ just going.
Sounds good.
Cool. Sounds good, Chris.
We're
We're just gonna go to the next guy. Yeah, that sounds awesome.
I mean,
so.
I don't really hold a candle to Chris either, but I do know more than you buffoons. So
Hells yes, you do. That's why I made you director of Dynasty Baseball. I actually do remember the title. I was just busting balls.
I've never played in that.
All right, well that's it for the show, everybody. AJ and I will be back on Thursday for a very fun kind of game show hour of Fantasy Six Pack Hour. It'll be pretty fun. We have no idea what's coming, by the way. Mike LaPlante is figuring this out, and we're either just going to look like idiots or
you're going to look like idiots. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, probably. Just a little look like idiots.
Hour. So. That doesn't sound promising.
I don't know what he's doing. We're going to cut. See you guys.